Hey you guys, so in cleaning up some of my videos, trying to streamline and get them more algorithm friendly on YouTube, I came across an interesting little excerpt that I went off on a tirade, as I do, if y'all know me well enough. I was discussing buying and selling wheels and the struggles I was having, finding wheels for the Vue, and ultimately why that led me to stick with the red lines. And I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit, and actually I'm going to cut that out of the original video and just make this a standalone video, as you guys will see. But one thing I started to mention and didn't elaborate as much on as I should have, especially considering here recently the question has come up a lot in the Facebook group. We had a member that had purchased some wheels and was experiencing a vibration. So we're going to discuss that a little bit. When you are looking for wheels, the biggest frustrating thing to me when you're not dealing, eBay sellers are pretty good about having all the information. I don't know if they require them to or what, or they're just actually wanting to sell their stuff instead of having it sit indefinitely. Facebook Marketplace, however, is a bunch of hooligans that literally know nothing about anything. Trying to get a straight answer about lug pattern it's been such a disaster. I've driven multiple places only to find out that they thought it was something that it wasn't. Always try this stuff on before you buy it. And if you can't, see what vehicle it came off of. That will give you can extrapolate sizes that way. But another good tool, I picked these up at auto shows, World of Wheels and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll have vendors and they'll sell all this kind of stuff. For the Saturn, I've already marked it on here what the size is, just for my reference. There we go. So what you actually do is you line this up. It's like, say you're at the junkyard and something's just sitting around. You line it up, and that gives you, it lines up with your holes. That guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. Anyway, they've got everything's marked. I just did that for a quick reference. So you can line that up. You can always take something like this to the place that's selling it if you can't bring your vehicle for some reason. But ideally, you want to bring the vehicle and try it on. Now, the other thing that it boils down to, the Dodge Chargers and Challengers have the same lug pattern, the 5x114. The difference with them is their offset. I'm still learning about offerings, but it seems like the bulk of the really nice wheels that you usually see people selling are the SRT, the Hellcats, things of that nature. In fact, there's a really nice 7-spoke that comes on the Chrysler 300 SRT. I debated about it, but the offset is like 25, and our offset is 38. Granted, that all changes based on the width of the wheel. The Hellcats and all that, I think they're 9 wide. You're running with a really wide wheel that sticks out considerably from the shoulder. And I don't know that I want that look. Works on some vehicles. I don't necessarily like it on lowered SUVs. Raised SUVs and trucks, it looks good to have it sticking out to the side. When you're selling or when you are asking about a wheel for sale, there are always going to be numbers printed on the back of the spoke of the wheel. You're going to want to know what's the size. Granted, you can extrapolate that from a tire, but what's the width? And here's your offset. Now on aftermarket wheels, usually you'll just get this, and then on another spoke, you'll see ET 38, 40, 35. With the 7.5, 38, 35, that's a really good range for the Saturns. It brings them in right close to the fender and lines everything up. I like that. Looks clean without getting overly obnoxious, sticking out, and then you feel like you need to put a smaller tire and stretch it, and I'm not going into all that. Anyway, find different numbers on there, and all these numbers will give you more clues. B6004, of course we've already been over the diameter, width, and offset, and then you see your little GM logo, so it came from GM. And there's another number. Now, aftermarket wheels, you're not going to have nearly as many of these designations and numbers, and that may even be your part number. Anyhow, you should be able to get enough information from the back of the spokes to get your width diameter, offset. Those are the most important things you can extrapolate before you even get there. Will it fit? And what vehicle did it come off of? If they at least know that, that should get you in the ballpark. If you're a seller, please provide that, because it's so frustrating to find a listing and they don't have anything. Now, the other thing, on Marketplace, I was trying to find redline wheels there or something equivalent, maybe something in a 20. The Saturn Lug pattern is harder to find. There are tons of the 5x114.3. That's very common. Saturn Vue is, as well as the Equinox, the Captiva, they are the 5x115. They're harder to find. Everybody flip-flops about what you can and can't use. Some say it's no problem to put the 114.3 on the 115 because it's only 3 millimeters difference and it's not really a big deal. I'm still trying to figure all that out because I don't want to do anything that's not safe. But I also don't want to go overboard and pigeonhole myself into a box. But okay, so you heard me in that segment mention the 5x114.3 versus the 5x115 that we have on the Vues. Now, running the smaller diameter lug pattern, diameter that the studs actually make, still 5 lug, but the 114.3 versus the 115. People say, well, it's not a big deal. It's just slightly smaller. It's 0.7 millimeter difference, which really, you know, you're talking about almost like a pencil lead and some of the mechanical pencils, and that's tiny. It's really not going to make a difference. Well, in the grand scheme of things, I guess, no, it's a very small difference, but there are some factors that you need to consider if you are bound and determined you want to run one of those wheels on your vehicle, and why I ultimately opted to paint these redline wheels as I did. You see here the before and after. Yes, those are dirty, but why I went this route versus the shenanigans on Marketplace, not being able to get a straight answer. With the 1143 offerings, they're only 0.7 millimeter difference. It is a smaller diameter, so the dynamics of what's going to be happening is you have your lugs and that circle is slightly smaller, so it's going to put some stress, ever so slightly, stress on those studs, and it will potentially pull them in, especially if each time the wheel is put on and taken off, it's not put back in exactly the same spot. Now, what puts the wheel on in the same spot is your hubs, your hub diameter. So when you're buying aftermarket wheels, typically they're bigger than the majority of wheels that are out there in the OEM market. Now, what is recommended and should be more mainstream than it is using what they call Hub Centric Rings. Basically, they look like a donut. Here I am talking about hubs and everything else and not giving you a representation. Sorry, this is very dirty, but it's going to give us the best representation for me to be able to show you this. Now, I painted the drums and everything on this Civic of mine, my daily driver, with blue. This is the car's hub. It is actually highlighted for us, so it makes it easy. The hub is blue, the hub of the car, and this black, of course, this is the aftermarket wheel, and this is the aftermarket wheels hub. Here is the Hub Centric Ring I've been talking about. You see how it takes up the gap between the car's hub and the hub of the aftermarket wheel. It's going to fill that gap, and it's going to help center the wheel on the car's hub so that you don't have the variation. I guess it's up and down, side to side, depending upon how you're looking at it. But it will get your studs centered in the lug holes as close as it can. You know, of course, there's tolerances and variants and everything, so it's not 100% perfect. But with the hub-centric ring and then the conical seat of the lug nut itself on these style wheels, it will help center everything as close to perfect as it can. That then locks the wheel into its prime position and alleviates vibrations. If you don't have this here in place, you've got this huge gap. Now granted, this is very exaggerated because aftermarket wheels are designed with much larger hubs so that they can accommodate the tons of vehicles that are out there and all their different hub variances. Every OEM manufacturer is going to have something a little bit different, and the aftermarket wheels want to not have to produce a wheel for every single car, so they run a much larger hub diameter to accommodate multiple vehicles. So they sell a ton of these, and what you're going to have to do is find out the hub diameter of your vehicle, and that's going to be the inner diameter of your hub centric ring. And then you're going to find out the wheel, what is its hub diameter, and its hub diameter matches the outside of your hub centric ring, its outside diameter. And I'll have a picture of that in there following this excerpt. Most of the time when you buy aftermarket wheels, they will have an option to buy, and they will find out what vehicle you're putting it on, and they will match up the correct ring to your wheel and your hub for your vehicle. So when they ask you, do you want hub centric rings when you buy aftermarket wheels? Yes, you do. I thought I had one on hand, but I don't have one readily available, hence me throwing in that stock photo for you guys. But what ends up happening is that takes up the void that's made when you run a larger hub on a smaller hubbed vehicle. That is a snug fit. So when you're putting that wheel then on and off, it should be lining up in the exact same place. That's your best bet. That's the route you want to go, because then your lug nuts are centered as best as they possibly can be in said lug holes. If you just throw those wheels on there without the hub centering rings, they're going to be slightly off. And it may look good to your eye, but what's going to happen as you're going down the road is different speeds, usually between 40 and 70 miles an hour, you're going to start experiencing a vibration. Said vibration in itself is not catastrophic. I mean, I guess over time it could cause suspension issues, potentially bearing issues, your wheels to wear unevenly. People say it's fine, no big deal. They just go on about life and don't worry about it. So with the hub centric rings, you're not going to deal with the vibration. Should reduce the stress on the studs, so you should be good. Just remember, running that smaller diameter lug hole pattern on a larger diameter lug hole is going to cause variances. So you put the hub rings in, and that has sorted out problem number one, the largest problem, the biggest problem. Number two is the actual lug nuts themselves are now not centered in the hole. This is going to be an exaggeration, but maybe it'll help illustrate the point. Your stud in there, it is stationary, okay? You've got a taper right here, and your typical lug nut has a taper that corresponds, and as it's going down, it is also centering, helping to center the wheel on the stud, and that happens across all five, and that helps to keep you centered. Now, if you're off with a slight variance, those tapers are going to conflict. You're going to end up with your stud coming through like this instead of centered like that. Now granted, this is a very poor illustration, but you get my point. If they're all pulling in like this, they're putting extra stress over here on this side, as well as extra stresses being put on the stud, pulling it inwards. That's problem two. Hopefully that illustration is less clunky than it felt. What they do have on the market is things called Wobble Lug Nuts. Wobble Lug Nuts, which I'll be putting some pictures in to help you guys understand what they look like. These Wobble Lug Nuts allow their bases to seat into the tapered portion of the wheel, and then the top is free to slightly move. You have to go with a reputable company. I'm going to be adding a link in the description to someone who keeps coming up. They do a lot for the European cars. I don't know personally, but they have a really good write-up on the page I'm going to link in that's going to be much better about describing. It's going to have all the pictures. It's going to tell you a lot better than I can. But essentially what it does is that instead of your stud, the Wobble Lug nut then takes up the stressors and recenters how everything mounts to the wheel. And it's supposed to help correct problem number 2. And it should reduce any stresses on your studs and also help firm up any minor vibrations that still remain after using the Hub Centric Ring. So I would suggest, if you want to go this route, you read up on that, consider the Wobble Lug nuts, but at a bare minimum, bare minimum, you go with Hub Centric Rings. On the Facebook page, she and her husband installed the Hub Centric Rings on her Vue with 114.3 aftermarket wheels. It took care of her vibration. She did the right thing. She asked, she stopped driving it, she got the parts, she fixed it, and she's good to go. So please, you guys, take it serious. On heavier vehicles like a Vue that's an SUV, or high horsepower vehicles, you know, you're talking Chargers, Challengers, things of that nature. You don't want that oops to be you and you have a wheel shear off or a stud break, or God only knows what catastrophic disaster can happen. You don't want it to be you. Taking out another car, careening off the side of the road. I don't like taking risks when you're talking about wheels. I mean, they've got to be one of the most important items on your vehicle when it comes to keeping it under control going at speed. You know, we're going on the interstates, which in Georgia, we've got some that are up at 70 miles an hour. Out west, you've got some unlimited places, and overseas, you've got Autobahn, and you really don't want to take a risk with things like that at those kind of speeds. A split second and you're done, you know, don't take the risk. Anyway, that's my PSA on that. Look up those Wobble Lugs and Hub Centric Rings if you're going to go that route. And yeah, so that's my my 2 cents on that. Take it or leave it. While we're discussing the fitment, what have you guys seen? What have you guys experienced? What has happened with your friends? Have you guys run a slightly different lug pattern? And what has been your experiences? Have you had vibrations? What processes did you go through? Did you use Hub Centric Rings? Did any of you use Wobble Lug nuts? I want to talk to somebody who's used Wobble Lug nuts. Y'all weigh in if you have. I'd love to hear about it. All right, you guys, that's enough of my tirade. But I just want to say, if you enjoyed this, if you found it useful, please like, subscribe. I put this content out for free to help the next person down the line, because not all of us had a family member who was a mechanic who could dispense knowledge. I did not, so I had to learn from friends and through some of my exes, and thank you to them. So I'm spreading this knowledge for others, and hopefully me being a female, and it'll help empower some other women to realize they can do this stuff too. You know, you just have to take it in baby steps, take it off in small pieces. So that being said, if you found value in this, please like, subscribe, give me some comments at least. You know, what do you guys think about running these wheel setups? Safe, not safe? Let me know. How many of you have done it? What problems have you experienced? Let's help educate the masses. And the more subs I get and the more likes and comments, that helps the algorithm push it out to other people, so the content can be found by people who need to see it and need to learn. So again, I'm just asking that little bit, you guys, so that we can help the next generation, because they don't get out there and do stuff. They just look online, and so let's give them the content that they need to make proper choices, safe choices, and help them keep these older vehicles out there, because I'm pro older vehicle. I don't like all the technology. So let's keep these old guys on the road. Let's teach the youngins how to keep the old vehicles running and going. All right, you guys, that's it. Take care.